What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Duke Wisdom Podcast, or more accurately today, the Sean Stewart Podcast. We have just witnessed the coming out party, man, the breakout game for that young man, Sean Stewart. If you've been listening to this podcast since preseason, first of all, I don't know how you haven't got tired of my voice yet. Second of all, thank you. And third of all, you know that I've been high on Sean Stewart. I was high on Sean Stewart coming into the season. I've had certainly have expressed my doubts throughout the year. There's no doubt about that. My confidence waned, not in him as a person or a player, but just on his readiness during his freshman season. There was a lot of questionable decision making, and he just a little too excited at times. But I think the best way to combat a player getting excitable is let him run and let him play. And today we really got to see Sean Stewart run. I mean, there have been games he's been progressively playing more and more, especially now with Caleb Foster out. Minutes for Sean Stewart have gone up because they have to rely on someone off the bench. It's him and Ryan Young for the most part, with some sprinkles of TJ Power. I'll talk more about those guys later. But today, I think we clearly see Sean Stewart play his most full, complete, and best game. He was not the leading scorer. In fact, actually, Jeremy Roach outscored him by 9, and Jared McCain outscored him. But he was the player of the game. Sean Stewart with his first ever career player of the game. And not only just because of what he did offensively, but what he did on the boards. And most importantly, what he did on DJ Burns, man. Because, and I'll get into the game plan more, but just the ability of Stewart, the resilience of Sean Stewart, because to begin the game, even when he was first on him in the first half, Burns was having his way, completely having his way every single time. And Stewart was trying to stand his ground completely to a fault, because DJ Burns is just a massive man, and Duke has no one on its roster that can guard him one-on-one consistently. And so he's just knocking Sean on his butt. He's knocking him down. He's huge. And that's something we saw last year against NC State and PNC Arena, where Burns had his way. Burns was coming off the bench. He wasn't as big of a deal for State until that game, really. And he made Ryan Young look silly in that one. And that was before Duke had figured out how they needed to use Derek Lively. And once they figured that out, Lively did a very good job of defending Burns. And the game in Cameron last season, Duke struggled to find a way to guard Burns, and honestly, John Shire decided to live with letting DJ Burns beat them. He's not going to be able to, is what Shire gambled. And even on those one-on-one catches, as the game went on, Sean Stewart did better and better and better at defending the big man, getting to where he was fronting him and poking the ball out a couple of times, causing a turnover. But for the most part, Burns was still collecting the ball, but it was out of rhythm because Stewart was breaking it up, and then he made him, fall down that one time. He forced bad, not even bad shots, but tough shots that Burns made still most of the time, because he's a very good big man. He's a great finisher with really great touch. But as horrible of a matchup as Burns is for Duke, I'm extremely impressed with how they adjusted to it, and specifically just how Sean Stewart played against him. And I'm very glad that Stewart ended up being the guy to defend him, because I think he was the guy best suited to do it. I think Filipowski can do it, and I think he had successful moments when they switched Filipowski on to Burns in the second half. But I think in the first half, it just wasn't what Duke needed to see, because Kyle was going to get in foul trouble early, and that wasn't ideal for Duke, I think. So, and obviously it wasn't, because Flip picked up 2 fouls early and was a complete non-factor in the first half of the game. But, I mean, this is the Sean Stewart breakout game. When you really just look at the beginning of the game, Duke ends up winning, by 16? If you take, or by 15. If you end up taking away the 9-0 start that NC State had, I mean, I was having flashbacks to last year, man. I was at the Duke State game in PNC last year in the NC State student section. My partner goes to State, and she was like, do you want me to get you a ticket? I was like, obviously, yeah. I want to go to a Duke State game. I knew Duke was going to lose the game. I was like 100% confident because PNC is just the worst place on earth for Duke. And especially because Duke wasn't what they are now, like what they're rolling now. But then not so much at the time. Duke was probably like a 9 seed in the field last season, and I just knew that game was going to go south. I didn't know it was going to take Duke 7 minutes to score, and it was going to be like 24-5 to start the game. That was rough. I got bullied by the NC State mascots. It was tough. It was a hard knock time. But I was having flashbacks to that game when it started 9-0. I knew this Duke team was going to get their crap together, but I was still thinking, man, just, oh God, I hope it doesn't go the same way. And there's a reason why it didn't. And this is a tip of the cap to John Shire. In games past, especially in PNC Arena, it doesn't really matter what State shoots on the season from 3. That's completely irrelevant when Duke walks into the building. They will shoot 70% from 3. That's just a fact pretty much every game. And it sucks. But that's how it is. And it's like, I've seen it happen so many times. 2015 just shot the lights out against eventual national champion Duke and blew them out. They shot the lights out in 2018 against what was a top 5 team in the country and knocked off that Duke team. That Duke team almost went to the Final Four. They beat the brakes off the 2020 Duke team that was like a 2 seed caliber basketball team. They knocked Duke off, just destroyed them last season. And it's always the 3-point shooting. I mean, last year, obviously, I talked about Burns played a major role in that as well. But the 3-point shooting, it feels like State can't miss. It always feels like State just can't miss when Duke walks into the building. Well, Duke decided we're going to live with DJ Burns burning us because the modern game is threes. It's 3-point oriented. To beat Duke, you're going to have to knock them down, plain and simple. You got to knock down threes to beat Duke. It's not possible to beat this Duke team without doing so because this Duke team is such a good 3-point shooting team. They didn't start the game and they were like 4 of 20 at a point, ended the game 9 of 30, which is still just 30%, but that's still 9 3-point shots made. But you got to live with something. He said, we're going to die by DJ Burns. We're going to live and die by what DJ Burns does. And it's like, how much can DJ Burns really score? The end of the day answer was he can put up a season high 27 points, which ended up, being like 40% of State's points roughly. I'm not great at math. It's not that far off of half. But in turn, it was like, let's take away the 3-pointer. By not doubling over on Burns, it was basically saying we're going to stick with DJ Horn. We're going to stick with Jaden Taylor. We're going to stick with Casey Morsell. And we're just going to let the big man go to work and just see if we can beat him on the other end. And they did. State only attempted 8 threes. Didn't even shoot that poorly. Like 3 of 8. Didn't even shoot poorly. But only attempting 8 threes in today's game is crazy. Every single possession ran through Burns. Every single thing ran through Burns. And to be quite honest with you, it's the obvious way to play against Duke if you're State, right? Because the obvious advantage you have is the size of DJ Burns. When you're playing North Carolina, Armando Bacot can do a much better job of standing up defensively against Burns than anybody at Duke can. Bacot has a lot more size. Duke doesn't have that size to deal with it. They don't even have the length of Derek Lively to deal with it. But it seems really that this season, it hasn't been... State doesn't run through DJ Burns. They don't. He's been a good piece, but he hasn't been what we thought he was going to be preseason. State lives and dies by DJ Horn. Plain and simple. They had those games that were really good against Wake Forest, just those really entertaining games, completely fueled by DJ Horn, man. Just totally fueled. He was great against Clemson. He was, and then against Carolina, the reason State was up in the first half was because DJ Horn went for 16 in the first half. DJ Horn was a non-factor, man. He had that one switch on Sean where he had Sean stumbling a bit, but 8 points. He only shot 8 times. DJ Horn shoots a lot. That's a guy that's probably going to land on second team All ACC on Monday, on next Monday. And so, man, come on. What a great coaching decision. And if you were Duke, you had to feel good at halftime because DJ Burns killed you. And Kyle Filipowski barely played, obviously didn't score in the first half. You were playing your bench the entire time. You had Stewart, Power, and Young out there for extended minutes at a time, and you shot very poorly, like 18% worse from the floor in the first half than State did, and you were up 3. Had to feel pretty good about that, to be totally honest with you. And I think that just looking at my notes for the game, I put, toward the end of the game, I put predictable start, State sold its soul. I had a tweet that I was just like, I don't know when it happened, but it definitely did happen at some point. State sold its soul to get every win in PNC Arena and play out of its mind against Duke. That's what it looked like for the first few minutes, but this Duke team is at a new level. Seth Greenberg said it before the game started on ESPN. He said, this Duke team is now looks like an Elite Eight Final Four team. It does. And it does. He's absolutely right. I think the next step is for all of these players playing at their games and doing so well. Roach, McCain, Mitchell at times, maybe not so much today. Sean Stewart, Tyrese Proctor. The step from Duke jumping from Elite Eight Final Four to we think this team genuinely could win the national title is Kyle Filipowski consistently being that 20-plus per game scorer. That's what they need to be the national champions. But they do look like a team that can make a Final Four run right now. They really do. I also put that view this one in a void. I almost always want to view the Duke State game in a void because it feels like a guaranteed loss in Raleigh, that is. And this one, not so much. This one was big for this Duke team. I mean, huge. We're not sure exactly how long Foster's going to be out, whether it's just regular season, ACC tournament, NCAA tournament, who knows? But all I know is I think Duke's going to really need everybody else off the bench, whether Foster plays this season or not. And they today was a massive step in the right direction in getting Sean Stewart in particular ready to contribute in the NCAA tournament. Because I was just, I was probably just talking not that long ago about how I wasn't confident in Sean Stewart in the NCAA tournament. Today, he just changed my mind. I think he can now. I think he can be that guy. I think Ryan Young can be that guy. And I like that he's what they need from him. He's not perfect, but he's the best version or a very good version of what his freshman self can be. And that's going to be massive for Duke come postseason. So that is the biggest storyline for Duke today is the emergence of Sean Stewart and what he can be for this team as they enter the postseason. But also what he can be in the Carolina matchup, because even if Filipowski gets into foul trouble against Baycott and Ingram, how can Sean Stewart hold his own? Can Sean Stewart hold down his fort like he just did against DJ Burns? Can he try and can Duke's guards put him over the hump if a situation like that emerges in Cameron on Saturday? Because Duke's playing for a ACC regular season title on Saturday right now. Carolina, barring a meltdown to Notre Dame tomorrow or tonight, I guess, as you're listening to this, barring that, Duke's absolutely playing for a share of the regular season title. Carolina's locked it. They win tomorrow. They will win the regular season title. The question will be whether they're sharing it with Duke or not. And then the other question will be who gets the 1 seed. And I guess I'll go ahead and address that real quick before I do a deeper dive into tonight's game. This is how it's going to go for tiebreakers in the ACC. Let me look up ACC standings. There's so many variables, right? There's so many variables. ACC regular season title is cut and dry. Carolina beats Notre Dame. Carolina has won the ACC regular season title, win or lose against Duke. But all Duke has to do to win the ACC regular season title, no matter what happens, they have to win against Carolina. They got to win that game. They just do. They have to win that game. So if Duke wins against Carolina, they get the regular season title. But here's how the 1 seed's going to rock out. The way the tiebreaker works is you go to head-to-head. Now, if Duke beats Carolina, obviously it would be 1-1. That would turn it to the next tie-breaking mechanism, which, in my opinion, should be overall record. But it's not. It is how did the teams do against the next team in the standings, which will most likely be Virginia, who is who has 7 losses and is taking on Georgia Tech at home. I'm not saying they can't lose that. I just don't think they will. But both Duke and Carolina are 1-0 against Virginia. So then it would go to the next team. And who that next team is incredibly important, actually. Currently, it is Syracuse, which would give the advantage to Duke, who is 1-0 against the Orange. Carolina, obviously, is 1-1. If Syracuse ends as the 4 seed, Duke gets the 1 seed in the ACC tournament. However, there's different ways this can pan out, obviously. Clemson currently is in 5th. If Clemson were to get the 4 seed, again, Duke would get the 1 seed. Carolina was 1-1, Duke 1-0. Whoever has the best winning percentage. It's not just number of wins, but winning percentage. So the fact that Duke only played them once doesn't matter. And for Syracuse or Clemson. If it's Syracuse the 4, Duke's the 1. If it's Clemson at the 4, Duke's the 1. Syracuse has 8 losses. Clemson has 8 losses. 2 other teams currently have 8 losses in the ACC. The team in 6th, which is Pittsburgh, who Carolina does not have a loss to. Duke does. Pittsburgh is the 4. Carolina gets the 1 seed. Wake Forest, Carolina's 1-0 on them. Duke 1-1. If Wake Forest gets the 4 seed, Duke is not the 1. Carolina is. So Pitt or Wake is the 4. Carolina gets it. Syracuse or Clemson is the 4. Duke gets the 1 seed. That's how it would pan. Obviously, that's all dependent on Duke winning on Saturday. If Duke loses, they're automatically the 2 seed. They can't fall any lower than that. They're going to be the 1 or the 2. And let's look at the remaining schedules because they're really interesting too, right? Syracuse and Clemson's last game is against one another, actually, right? They're against one another. So, but here's the caveat: if Syracuse were to lose that game, obviously you'd be like, well, I think they've got the advantage. Maybe in tiebreakers. I haven't looked too far into it, but actually Clemson plays both Syracuse and Wake Forest. So 2 opportunities for Clemson to lose to 2 of the other schools. Wake's got an opportunity to drop Clemson, so does Syracuse. Honestly, who's Pitt playing? They're playing Florida State at home and State at home, which I'm not saying they can't lose either of those games, but it's interesting. The results, definitely be watching the results for those 4 teams because it will have a very direct impact on whether Duke is the 1 or the 2 seed after Saturday. So anyway, that's the large spiel about how seeding goes down and the regular season title and all that. First, let's go back to the game. Let's go back to the state game.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network or DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
You don't get to celebrate a lot of PNC Arena wins if you're Duke. So let's talk about it. In the first half, Jeremy Roach was weirdly a bit off, and what I mean by weirdly is like just missing uncharacteristically badly on threes. Like, not just the fact that he's missing them and he's like the top shooter percentage wise in the conference, but the fact that he was like one of those threes was like completely off to one side, missing the rim, and they just didn't look good. But he kind of righted the ship in the second half. Threes weren't falling. We don't need those against Carolina. And Jared McCain to start the game was just ice cold. It's like somebody packed him away in the freezer to start the game. He just wasn't there. But both of those guys, being the absolute gamers that they are and the all-ACC candidates that they are, both of them emerged in massive ways to start the second half. Jeremy Roach got going immediately in the second, setting the tone for Duke by getting that steal, that run out, saying, look, you're not going to put your foot down on our throats and take this just because it's your senior night. We're here. We're a Final Four team. You go through us, not the other way around. And I love that mentality by Jeremy Roach and this team. And then Jared McCain obviously knocked down some absolutely just massive shots down the line, including that 1 4-point play on like the third chance, which was huge. That really put the game away. That one iced the game. He started ice cold. He ended icing the game. And that's Jared McCain for you. He just never stops being confident and taking his shot. And his shot always looks good, whether he makes it or not. I think to start the game, it was really smart for Kevin Keats to put DJ Burns on Mark Mitchell. I think that was a really smart move because Burns can just kind of stay in the paint on Mark. Kevin Keats is going to live with Mark Mitchell shooting threes no matter what his percentage has been in ACC play. And when Mark Mitchell decided to shoot a three, he missed it by about 8 miles. And so after that happened, we kind of knew, well, Mark's not going to hit any threes. And I think after that happened, well, it happened even sooner than that John Shire decided we can't live with this because the way this is happening is Burns is just camping in the lane. He's not guarding Filipowski. Our advantage was supposed to be the fact that Filipowski is going to take him on the dribble, put him in the spin cycle, that kind of thing. And it's like, well, that's not happening, especially with Filipowski out of the game. It's like, look, we can't put Mitchell and Stewart in a lot. I don't know. Mark wasn't working out in that matchup. I'll just say that. And John wasn't afraid to go to his bench and lean on his second unit, something that hasn't worked out well in certain times, but worked out incredibly well today. And I've sung Sean Stewart's praises so much. Those two early fouls on Flip before the under 12 was predictable because they were obviously going to go at him, but it's unfortunate how often it keeps happening. And that is always the scariest thing to me. But after seeing what Sean Stewart can do, I'm not scared of of Sean playing legitimate minutes. I'm not. And here's my reasoning for this. The worst thing, the moment that I knew Duke was going to lose the Final Four game to Carolina in 2022 was when Mark Williams picked up those early fouls and had to come out of the game. At that point in time, I was like, yeah, this game's going to be tough. This one probably didn't go their way because the way the whistle was being blown, and taking Mark Williams out of that game, I knew Theo John was going to have to rock the rest of the game. And I just didn't. Theo John wasn't an offensive threat at all. And he fouled just as much as Sean Stewart does. I think that he and Sean Stewart brought similar dynamics defensively. But honestly, I think Sean Stewart's a better shot blocker. And that's crazy because Theo John was one of the best shot blockers in Marquette basketball history. I think Stewart's a better shot blocker because I think Stewart is clearly a better athlete, just vertically speaking. And so I think that, but Stewart to me is a capable offensive player, and he's got touch. Stewart can make floaters. He's got touch around the rim, and I think that's what separates him and makes him valuable. That it's not like you just have a guy that's not going to score, that cannot score on the floor in that fifth spot. When you have Sean Stewart, he's turning into a player that, he can give you buckets. He can go get some buckets. And that's really important that Sean Stewart remain a competent offensive threat in the postseason. So when Kyle Filipowski, pretty much inevitably when the game happens in the postseason, that he's got 2 fouls early, you can confidently put Sean Stewart in that game and be like, the guards will get us through this and Sean's going to hold his own. And I think that's huge. That's very important for Duke going down the line. I'd obviously love to see a little bit more from Kyle, I think. But and I haven't even talked about the Virginia game, which is crazy. I've almost completely forgotten and neglected the fact that the last time I put out an episode, it was the Everybody Hates Duke episode, right? And I was talking about the Wake game and the Louisville game, and I've almost forgotten that the Virginia game literally even occurred. Well, Kyle Filipowski was player of the game in that one. He had 21 points. That game was a lot of fun. That was a good turn your brain off game for Duke. It was a good statement for Duke. I loved that Duke put the foot on the gas early against Virginia because that's exactly what you need to do, is just speed them up. But this Virginia team is just stupidly not good right now. Virginia's really bad. part of me hopes Duke gets the 2 seed so they can play Virginia in a potential semifinal, if Virginia can even win its quarterfinal game in the ACC tournament. When you think about that Virginia game, though, just a blowout win, a beautiful game played by Duke. There's not a whole lot else to say besides this game is just another example of why Duke has become a Final Four contender. It was a great game and a terrifically aggressive game offensively by Kyle Filipowski. It contrasted a lot of what we've seen lately. I don't think he played poorly today. It was mostly just because of the restricted minutes and foul trouble. He had a fantastic game against Virginia. Tyrese Proctor played very well in that one, too. He also played very good in the first half against NC State as well, and I'll talk about that. Actually, I'll just talk about it now. He did a very good job of being able to make threes and make timely, seemingly improbable shots when Duke really looked like it had its back up against the wall. And those are the kind of shots that he's going to need to make in March. And he did so in the first half in big moments. He wasn't needed to make those shots in the second because Roach and McCain stepped back into the picture. So just a terrific game by Duke against Virginia. Virginia's an absolute sad sack of a basketball team. I'm not going to lie to you. They just really are. But that happened. But I'm more impressed by what they did tonight at State. And, man, I mean, Kevin Keats, dude, he had a couple smart moves there at the end, but I think that he thoroughly got out-coached tonight. We're probably witnessing Kevin Keats' last season as the head coach at NC State, I would imagine. If it's not, NC State fans are probably going to riot. They're not they're not too happy about the job he's doing. And I had a note that says a lot more Sean Stewart. Obviously, I've talked about Sean Stewart. A lot more TJ Power in the first half as well, and he had a beautiful 3-point make that was big for the Blue Devils as well. And I really liked I liked some things I saw from TJ Power. He was ultimately only able to put up those 3 points. And Ryan Young only had 2 points too, but he also had 5 boards. I mean, he and Sean Stewart combined to be absolute terrors on the offensive glass with help from like McCain and the guards as well. But to be absolute terrors on the offensive glass, and that's the reason why Duke had the lead at the half. I've neglected to say that until now, but 14 offensive boards, and that's hustle plays. That's 50-50 balls, man. And the last time they lost to Carolina, it was because they didn't make those plays. They didn't get those 50-50 balls. Now Duke is making those plays, and they're getting the 50-50 balls. We'll see if they'll do it against Carolina, but they've been doing it against other competition, and it's been a very warm sight to see for this team. TJ Power got run in the first, not so much in the second. Same with Ryan Young because Sean really took over the game, but great contributions from both of those guys, especially Young. I love that dive on the floor, trying to go after it and chase a fast break. He didn't end up getting the ball for Duke, but just a heck of a hustle play by Ryan Young and no Jalen Blakes. I think it's safe to say at this point that John Shire has effectively cut Jalen Blakes out of the rotation for the rest of the year, and he did something similar last year too. That at this point in time, we're at must-win, huge basketball, and he just feels offensively probably can't trust Blakes in these moments. He wants guys that are threats offensively, and he felt the other 8 guys really they are threats offensively that played today. I talked about McCain, just his confidence. He had 16 points. Jeremy Roach led the team in scoring with 21, just 1 of 7 from 3, but ultimately found a way to have his game. He proved last year in Cameron that he's the ultimate Burns killer. Just get a nice little ball screen going. Heck, just put him on an island with his guard, kind of dribble for a little bit, and he did this at the end of the game. Lull that guard to sleep. If he can get past him, he's definitely getting past Burns, and he's going to score. Jeremy Roach, very fast player, kind of a nightmare fuel for DJ Burns on defense. And so very well done by Roach and McCain, especially in the second half. Filipowski found a way to be impactful in the second half as well. Proctor had a fantastic first half, and obviously the player of the game and the breakout star was Sean Stewart. There's only one game left in the regular season. We all know who it's against. I've said it time and time again. It's going to take poise. It's going to take focus, but Duke can hang a banner on Saturday. So, and potentially get the 1 seed in the ACC tournament, but that's really not all that important. Winning the ACC regular season title is way more important than getting the 1 seed. Heck, depending on how the teams pan out, getting the 2 seed might be better. If you're Duke, I would prefer to play against Wake Forest, who you really have it out for right now, probably. I'd prefer to play against them for a revenge game, Pitt for a revenge game, or Virginia. One of those three teams would be the preferable opponent in the semifinal. If you're Duke, you kind of, not that you're scared of them, but you'd prefer to avoid Clemson if you can do it. And you'd probably prefer to avoid Syracuse. I don't think, Syracuse would be the favorite in that one, but I'd avoid the orange guys, except Virginia. They're bad. But avoid, if they can avoid Clemson and Syracuse, it certainly wouldn't be a bad thing in my book right now. So you never know. It depends on how those games pan out to whether Duke even wants the 1 seed or not. The important thing is win Saturday, get the rivalry win, clinch the ACC regular season title tie with Carolina. That's the big news for the Blue Devils, obviously. Big game, big win at NC State. And what a season it's shaped up to be for Duke. They started 5-3, and now they're 24-6. 19-3 from that moment on. And a couple of those losses were very close. One of them was just really because of injuries. The other one, they really could have won the game at Wake. And so it's like this team is trending in the right direction at the right time, as John Shire's team seemed to do. And as always, I thank you guys for listening. I thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to follow Duke Wisdom on Instagram and Twitter, and follow and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you guys later.